The forge hadn't been lit in 3 weeks, and the people of Lincoln, New Mexico, were starting to talk. Abigail Vaughn stood in the doorway of the smithy, her black mourning dress already dusted with ash from the cold forge, her hands trembling as she looked at the tools her husband had wielded with such confidence. Samuel had been dead for 21 days, his heart giving out while he hammered a horseshoe, and she had inherited not just his business but the weight of expectation from an entire town that needed a blacksmith. At 24 years old, she had watched her husband work this forge for 6 years of marriage, but watching and doing were separated by a chasm as wide as the Rio Grande. The hammer felt foreign in her grip, too heavy, unbalanced. She had tried yesterday to light the forge properly, but the coal arrangement was wrong, the temperature never reaching the white heat needed to shape iron. 3 broken horseshoes sat on the workbench as evidence of her failure, the metal cracked and worthless. The town needed nails, hinges, wagon repairs, horseshoes, and 100 other things that kept life moving forward, and she was the only person in 50 miles who owned the equipment to make them, even if she had no idea how. The bell above the shop door rang, and Abigail turned to see Mrs. Henderson, the grocer's wife, her face arranged in that expression of pity that had become painfully familiar. "Oh, Abigail dear, I just wanted to check on you. Are you managing all right?" "I am trying, Mrs. Henderson, truly trying." Abigail set the hammer down with more force than intended, the clang echoing through the smithy. "Perhaps you should consider selling the business. A young widow like yourself, this is no life. You could move back east with your sister." Abigail stiffened. This was Samuel's legacy. "I cannot simply abandon it." Mrs. Henderson's expression suggested she thought otherwise, but she simply nodded and left, the bell chiming her departure. Abigail sank onto the anvil's wooden stump, fighting tears. Her sister Margaret had written twice already, urging her to come to Philadelphia, promising introductions to suitable gentlemen who could provide for her. But Philadelphia felt like surrender, and she was not ready to give up on the life she and Samuel had built, even if that life now seemed impossible to maintain alone. The afternoon sun slanted through the open doors when she heard hoofbeats outside. Abigail wiped her face and stood, straightening her dress. A tall man dismounted from a dusty gray mare, his movements economical and practiced. He wore typical cowboy attire, weathered from long days under the New Mexico sun, and when he removed his hat, she saw dark hair and eyes the color of storm clouds. He looked to be in his late 20s, perhaps 30 at most. "Madam," he said, his voice rough from disuse or dust. "Name is Isaac Garrett. My horse threw a shoe about 2 miles back. I was hoping to get her reshod." Abigail felt her stomach drop. "Mr. Garrett, I must be honest with you. I am not certain I can help. My husband passed recently, and I am still learning the trade." Isaac studied her for a long moment, then looked past her to the cold forge and scattered tools. "I am sorry for your loss, madam. How recently?" 3 weeks. The words came out barely above a whisper. He nodded slowly, then surprised her by asking, "Have you managed to light the forge at all?" "Once, but I could not get the temperature right. The iron would not heat properly." Isaac walked his horse to the hitching post, then approached the forge with the confidence of someone who knew his way around a smithy. He examined the coal bed, the bellows, the arrangement of tools. "My father was a blacksmith in Texas before he died," Isaac said. "He taught me the basics before I took to cowboy work. I am no master smith, but I know enough to shoe my own horse when needed. If you would allow it, I could help you light the forge proper and teach you what I know." Abigail felt a spark of something she had not experienced in weeks, something that might have been hope. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" Isaac turned to look at her directly, and she saw sincerity in his gray eyes. "Because I know what it is like to lose someone who holds all the knowledge you need. My father died when I was 15, and I would have given anything for someone to help me finish learning his trade. I drifted into cowboy work because I did not have the skill to make it as a smith, but maybe I can help you avoid the same fate." "I cannot pay you much," Abigail admitted. "The business has been closed these 3 weeks, and savings are limited." "Room and board would be payment enough," Isaac said, "and perhaps a small wage when you can afford it. I was heading through Lincoln looking for work anyway. This would suit me just fine." Abigail knew she should be cautious about accepting help from a stranger, but desperation and opportunity made for persuasive companions. "There is a room above the smithy. It was meant for an apprentice, though Samuel never took one on. It is yours if you want it." Isaac nodded. "Then we have an agreement, Mrs. Vaughn. When would you like to begin?" "Now," Abigail said firmly. "Right now, if you are willing." Isaac's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "Let us start with the forge then, the foundation of everything." He moved to the coal bed with practiced efficiency, showing her how to arrange the coal for proper airflow, how to create the nest where the iron would heat. His hands were scarred and calloused, the hands of someone who had worked hard his entire life. As he worked, he explained each step in clear, simple terms without condescension. "The coal needs to breathe," Isaac said, demonstrating the spacing. "Too tight and you choke the fire. Too loose and you waste heat. You want it arranged so the bellows can feed air directly to where your iron will sit." Abigail watched carefully, committing every detail to memory. When Isaac stepped back, she tried to replicate his arrangement, fumbling at first but gradually finding the pattern. He corrected her twice, gently, and on the third attempt she got it right. "Good," Isaac said. "Now we light it." The forge roared to life under Isaac's guidance, the coal catching and spreading until the bed glowed with proper heat. He worked the bellows with steady rhythm, and Abigail felt tears prick her eyes at the familiar sight. Samuel had pumped those bellows thousands of times, and seeing them move again made the smithy feel alive once more. "Your turn," Isaac said, stepping aside. Abigail gripped the bellows handle and began to pump. Her rhythm was unsteady at first, but Isaac talked her through it, and gradually she found the pace. "That is it," he encouraged. "Steady and even. You are heating the earth itself, coaxing it to give up its secrets. Respect the fire and it will work for you." They spent the rest of the afternoon on basic techniques. Isaac showed her how to judge temperature by color, how to hold the hammer for different types of strikes, how to use the hardy hole in the anvil for cutting and bending. Her arms ached within an hour, muscles protesting work they had never done, but Abigail pushed through the discomfort. This was her survival, her future, and pain was a small price to pay. By evening, she had successfully shaped her first horseshoe under Isaac's watchful guidance. It was crude compared to Samuel's work, uneven in places, but it was recognizable and functional. She held it up in the fading light, feeling a surge of pride that momentarily eclipsed her grief. "You did well," Isaac said, and she could hear genuine approval in his voice. "Tomorrow we will work on consistency, but for today you should be proud." Abigail looked at him, this stranger who had appeared like Providence itself. "Thank you, Mr. Garrett, truly. I do not know what I would have done without your help." "Isaac is fine," he said, "and you are welcome. Now about that room." She showed him to the quarters above the smithy, a modest space with a bed, washstand, and small stove. Dust covered everything, but Isaac seemed unbothered. "I have stayed in far worse," he assured her. "This will do perfectly." Abigail returned to her own home behind the smithy, a small adobe house that felt cavernous in its emptiness. She prepared a simple dinner of beans and cornbread, enough for two, and brought half to Isaac before she could question the propriety of the gesture. He accepted with quiet thanks, and she left him to settle in. That night, for the first time since Samuel's death, Abigail felt something other than crushing despair. The path ahead was still difficult, the challenges numerous, but she was no longer facing them entirely alone. The next morning, she arrived at the smithy to find Isaac already had the forge burning, his horse properly shod and grazing in the small paddock behind the building. He had also swept the floor and organized the tools that had been scattered in her grief-stricken attempts to work. "I thought we could start with nails today," Isaac said. "Simple, repetitive work that will build your muscle memory and hammer control." They fell into a pattern over the following days. Isaac would demonstrate a technique, then watch as Abigail replicated it, offering corrections and encouragement in equal measure. He had a patient teaching style, never making her feel inadequate for her mistakes. When she struggled with the hammer control needed for delicate work, he showed her exercises to strengthen her wrists. When she could not get the temperature right for welding, he taught her to read the fire's subtle color changes. Word spread through Lincoln that the Vaughn smithy was open again, and customers began to trickle back. At first, Abigail felt panic at the thought of working in front of others, but Isaac stood beside her, quietly coaching, letting her do the work while he ensured she did not fail publicly. Mrs. Henderson came in needing new hinges for her pantry door, and Abigail forged them under Isaac's guidance, the older woman watching with undisguised surprise. "Well," Mrs. Henderson said when Abigail presented the finished hinges, "I must say I did not expect this. They look quite good." "Thank you," Abigail replied, feeling her confidence grow. "I have had an excellent teacher." Mrs. Henderson's eyes moved to Isaac, speculation clear in her expression, but she said nothing, paid her bill, and left. Abigail knew the gossip would start, a widow and a strange cowboy working closely together, but she found she did not care as much as she might have expected. Isaac was helping her survive, and that mattered more than small-town talk. As weeks passed into a month, the nature of their relationship began to shift in subtle ways. Isaac's presence became not just necessary, but anticipated. Abigail found herself listening for his footsteps in the morning, looking forward to their conversations during work breaks. He told her about his life drifting from ranch to ranch, never quite finding a place that felt like home. She told him about growing up in Missouri, meeting Samuel when he came through her town, the leap of faith it took to marry him and move to New Mexico. "You regret it?" Isaac asked one afternoon as they worked side by side, both forging horseshoes in a companionable rhythm. "Marrying Samuel? No, never. He was a good man, kind. He loved me well." Abigail paused in her hammering, "But I regret not paying more attention to his work. I thought I had years to learn if I wanted to. Death does not give warnings." Isaac nodded slowly. "My father collapsed in his smithy too. One moment he was teaching me to make a gate hinge, the next he was on the ground. Sometimes I wonder if the work takes something from a man, all that heat and smoke." "I worry about that," Abigail admitted quietly. "What if this killed Samuel? What if I am courting the same fate?" "You cannot live in fear of what might happen," Isaac said firmly. "Your husband's death was tragic, but you cannot let it paralyze you. He would not want that." "How do you know what he would want?" The words came out sharper than intended. Isaac met her eyes steadily. "Because if I cared for someone enough to marry them, I would want them to live fully after I was gone. Not just survive, but truly live. Would he not want the same for you?" Abigail felt tears threatening but blinked them back. "Yes, he would. Samuel was generous in every way, even in how I imagine he would want me to grieve." They returned to work, but his words stayed with her. That evening, she made dinner for both of them, a proper meal of roasted chicken and vegetables, and invited Isaac to eat at her house rather than taking food to his room. He accepted, and they sat at her small table, the conversation flowing more easily than it had with Samuel in recent years. With her husband, comfort had bred a certain predictable silence. With Isaac, everything still felt new and worth discussing. "You have never married?" Abigail asked, then immediately felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Forgive me, that was too personal." "No, it is all right," Isaac said. "I have not. Came close once when I was 22. A rancher's daughter in Texas. But her father wanted her to marry someone with more prospects than a drifting cowboy who knew just enough smithing to be dangerous. He was probably right. I could not have provided for her the way she deserved." That must have hurt. It did for a time, but looking back, I think we were more in love with the idea of each other than the reality. She wanted stability I could not offer. I wanted someone who would not mind the wandering. He paused, studying his plate. "I have not met that person yet." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with possibility. Abigail looked at Isaac across the table, really looked at him, seeing not just her teacher and savior but a man who had his own loneliness, his own unfulfilled hopes. He was handsome in a weathered way, and kind and patient, and suddenly she was aware of how much she looked forward to his company each day. She stood abruptly, collecting dishes. "I should clean up. Tomorrow we have those wagon repairs for the Johnston family." Isaac helped her and their hands brushed as he handed her a plate. The contact lasted only a second, but Abigail felt it like a spark from the forge. From the way Isaac's expression shifted, he felt it too. Neither of them mentioned it, but the air in the small house seemed charged with awareness. That night, lying in bed, Abigail faced an uncomfortable truth. She was developing feelings for Isaac Garrett, feelings that went beyond gratitude or friendship. It had been only 6 weeks since Samuel's death, and guilt crashed over her. What kind of wife fell for another man so quickly? What did it say about her love for Samuel that her heart could already be turning toward someone else? But beneath the guilt ran a current of something else, something that felt like awakening. With Samuel, love had been comfortable, stable, built on shared plans and gentle affection. What she felt stirring for Isaac was different, charged with an intensity she had never experienced. Perhaps it was the circumstance of their meeting, the way he had appeared precisely when she needed help. Or perhaps it was simply that Isaac saw her in a way Samuel never had, not as someone to protect and provide for, but as someone capable of learning and growing and becoming strong. The next morning, Abigail dressed with extra care, telling herself it was simple propriety and not wanting to look nice for Isaac. She arrived at the smithy to find him already working on the wagon wheel rim that needed repair. He looked up when she entered and his smile sent warmth through her chest. "Good morning," he said. "I took the liberty of starting the forge. I hope that is all right." "Of course. Thank you." She tied on her leather apron, still too large for her frame but better than ruining her dress. "Should we work on this together?" They spent the morning side by side, heating and shaping the iron rim. The work required coordination, one person holding while the other hammered, and they had developed an unspoken communication that made the job flow smoothly. When they finished, the rim was true and strong, ready to carry the Johnston wagon for years to come. "You barely need me anymore," Isaac observed as they let the rim cool. "Your skills have improved remarkably." Panic fluttered in Abigail's chest. "Are you planning to leave?" Isaac looked at her with surprise. "Not unless you want me to. I thought I might stay on as your apprentice officially if you are willing. The work here suits me better than cowboy life ever did. But if you would prefer to work alone now that you have the skills, I would understand." "No," Abigail said quickly, then forced herself to slow down. "I mean, I would like you to stay. You are right that I have learned much, but there is still so much I do not know, and the work goes faster with two people. It makes practical sense." "Practical sense," Isaac repeated, something unreadable in his expression. "Yes, I suppose it does." The bell rang, announcing a customer. Abigail turned to see Sheriff Daniels, a man in his 50s with a stern expression that rarely softened. "Mrs. Vaughn," he said with a tip of his hat. "I have been hearing good things about the smithy being back in operation. Thought I would see for myself. What can we do for you, Sheriff?" "Need new bars for 2 cells in the jail. Prisoners have been working on the old ones, nearly rusted through in places. Can you handle that kind of work?" Abigail felt a flutter of nervousness. Jail bars needed to be strong, secure, not something she could afford to get wrong. She glanced at Isaac, who gave her an encouraging nod. "Yes, Sheriff, we can handle it. When do you need them?" 2 weeks enough time. That should be sufficient." The sheriff nodded and provided the measurements, then left. When he was gone, Abigail let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. "Jail bars," she said. "Those need to be perfect." "And they will be," Isaac assured her. "We will work on them together. I have made bars before." "The key is consistency and proper welds. Between the two of us, we can produce work that will last decades." They began planning the project, and Abigail felt her anxiety ease. With Isaac beside her, challenges felt manageable rather than insurmountable. It was a dangerous feeling, she knew, this growing dependence on his presence. But she could not seem to stop it. Over the following days, as they worked on the jail bars, Abigail became increasingly aware of Isaac in ways that had nothing to do with blacksmithing. The way his forearms flexed as he worked the hammer, the concentration on his face when he judged the heat of the metal, the rare smiles that transformed his usually serious expression. She caught herself staring more than once and had to force her attention back to the work. Isaac seemed to be struggling with something similar. She noticed his gaze lingering on her, noticed how he found excuses to stand close, to guide her hands with his own when teaching a new technique. The air between them grew thick with unspoken attraction, but neither seemed willing to acknowledge it directly. One afternoon, while they were welding sections of the bars together, a piece of hot metal slipped from Abigail's tongs. Isaac moved with impressive speed, catching it with his own tongs before it could hit her skirt and potentially set the fabric alight. The motion brought him close, his arm around her protectively, and for a moment they stood frozen, his breath warm against her cheek. "Thank you," Abigail whispered, her heart racing. "You have to be more careful," Isaac said, but his voice was rough with something other than concern. "I know, I just—" She turned slightly and found his face inches from hers. Gray eyes met brown, and the world seemed to narrow to just the space between them. Isaac stepped back abruptly. "I should check the forge temperature." He moved away, and Abigail felt the loss of his nearness like a physical ache. That evening she could not focus on anything. Dinner burned while she stared at nothing, remembering the feel of Isaac's arm around her, the heat in his eyes. She was falling in love with him, she realized. Perhaps had already fallen. The knowledge terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Isaac standing in the twilight, hat in hand, looking uncertain in a way she had never seen him. "Abigail," he said, using her first name for the first time. "I need to speak with you about something." She stepped aside to let him in, her pulse racing. Isaac paced her small parlor, clearly struggling with how to begin. "I am trying to be respectful," he finally said. "Of your grief, of your husband's memory of propriety, but I find myself failing and you deserve honesty." "Honest about what?" Isaac stopped pacing and looked at her directly. About how I feel. About the fact that I wake up every morning eager to see you, that every moment we spend together feels like a gift, that I have to force myself not to reach for you a dozen times a day. I know it is too soon. I know you are still mourning. I know I have no right to these feelings when you have lost someone you loved just weeks ago, but I cannot seem to stop feeling them, and I think you should know. Abigail's breath caught. Isaac, you do not have to say anything, he continued quickly. I am not asking for anything. I just needed you to know, needed to be honest rather than pretending. If you want me to leave, I will. If you want to forget I said any of this, we can do that too, but I could not keep lying by omission. Stop, Abigail said softly. When Isaac fell silent, she continued, You are not alone in feeling this way. I have been fighting the same battle, feeling guilty for developing feelings when Samuel has been gone such a short time. But the heart does not follow timelines or rules of propriety. Hope flickered in Isaac's expression. What are you saying? I am saying that you make me feel alive in a way I have not felt in years, that I look forward to seeing you every day, that when you touch me, even accidentally, I feel it everywhere. Abigail moved closer to him. I am saying that I am falling in love with you, Isaac Garrett, and it terrifies me because it feels too soon and too fast and too intense, but it is happening regardless. Isaac closed the distance between them, cupping her face gently in his calloused hands. Are you certain? I do not want you to regret this later. I am certain that I want to find out what this could be between us. I am certain that life is too short to ignore happiness when it appears. Samuel would want me to live, truly live. You said that yourself. Then may I kiss you? Isaac asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Please, Abigail breathed. His lips met hers softly at first, tentative, giving her space to change her mind. But Abigail leaned into the kiss, her hands finding his shoulders, and the gentleness transformed into passion. This kiss was nothing like the comfortable affection she had shared with Samuel. This was fire and need and awakening. This was two lonely people finding unexpected connection. This was the beginning of something that felt written in the stars despite its improbable timing. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. I did not come to Lincoln looking for this. Neither did I, Abigail replied. But I am glad you found it anyway, found me. What do we do now? Isaac asked. The town will talk. A widow taking up with a drifter cowboy barely 6 weeks after her husband's death. It will not be kind. Abigail straightened, determination filling her. Let them talk. I have spent too much of my life worried about what others think. Samuel is gone, and I will always honor his memory, but I am still here, still alive, and if I have found something real with you, I will not apologize for it. Isaac smiled, and it transformed his entire face. You are remarkable, Abigail Vaughn. We are remarkable together, she corrected. In the smithy and out of it. They spent the evening talking, really talking, about hopes and fears and the future. Isaac admitted that he had been drifting so long he had stopped imagining a settled life, but now he could see it, a life here in Lincoln with Abigail. She told him about her dreams for the smithy, wanting to expand beyond basic repairs to more creative ironwork, decorative pieces that would showcase true artistry. We could do that together, Isaac said. Combine our skills and knowledge, build something bigger than either of us could alone. I would like that, Abigail agreed. Very much. As the evening grew late, Isaac reluctantly stood to leave. I should go. We both need rest, and I do not want to damage your reputation more than necessary. Abigail walked him to the door, stealing one more kiss before he left. As she watched him cross to the smithy and climb the stairs to his room, she felt lighter than she had in months. The guilt was still there, a quiet presence she suspected would take time to fully fade, but it was overshadowed by joy and anticipation. The next morning they completed the jail bars together, their work synchronized perfectly. Sheriff Daniels came to inspect them personally, testing their strength, examining the welds. Finally, he nodded approval. "Fine work, Mrs. Vaughn, very fine work. Your husband would be proud." The words could have stung, but instead, Abigail felt peace. Samuel would be proud, not just of the craftsmanship, but of how she had survived his loss, how she had fought to keep his legacy alive while also building something new. Love was not a limited resource. What she had felt for Samuel did not diminish what she was growing to feel for Isaac. They were different loves for different seasons of her life. As winter approached, bringing cooler temperatures to New Mexico, the smithy thrived. Word had spread about the quality of work coming from the Vaughn forge, and orders increased steadily. Abigail and Isaac worked side by side from dawn until dusk most days, their partnership seamless. And in the evenings, they spent time together at her house, talking, sharing meals, slowly building the foundation of something lasting. The town did talk, of course. Mrs. Henderson made several pointed comments about hasty attachments and appropriate mourning periods. But there were others who understood, who saw how Isaac had saved not just Abigail but an essential business the town needed. And there were women, other widows mostly, who looked at Abigail with something like envy, wishing they had found the courage to reach for happiness again. 3 months after Samuel's death, Isaac asked Abigail to marry him. They were working late on a custom gate order, the forge glowing warm in the gathering darkness, when he set down his hammer and turned to her. "I know it is fast," he said without preamble. "I know people will judge. But I also know that I love you, that I want to spend every day for the rest of my life working beside you, living beside you. Will you marry me, Abigail?" Abigail's eyes filled with tears, but they were happy tears. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." They decided to wait until 6 months had passed since Samuel's death. A small concession to propriety, but also to give Abigail time to feel certain. Not that she doubted her feelings, but she wanted to ensure she was honoring Samuel's memory appropriately while also moving forward with her life. In the meantime, they continued building their business and their relationship. Isaac officially became her partner in the smithy, and they commissioned a new sign that read Vaughn and Garrett Blacksmithing. The day it went up, Abigail felt a profound sense of rightness. She was not erasing Samuel's legacy but expanding it, evolving it into something new. The wedding took place on a crisp February morning in 1884, exactly 6 months after Samuel's death. It was a small ceremony, just a few close friends and the preacher. Abigail wore a simple dress of deep blue rather than white, another small acknowledgement of her widowhood. Isaac wore new clothes purchased especially for the occasion, his hair trimmed, his usually serious face alight with joy. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac kissed her with such tenderness that several women in attendance dabbed at their eyes. It was not Abigail's first marriage, but it felt like a beginning nonetheless, the start of a partnership that encompassed work and love in equal measure. They held a small reception at the smithy, the space transformed with bunting and wildflowers that friends had contributed. Mrs. Henderson even came, offering stiff congratulations that gradually warmed as the afternoon progressed, and she saw how genuinely happy Abigail was. "I may have judged too harshly," the older woman admitted. "You do seem well suited to each other." "We are," Abigail agreed. "Sometimes life brings us what we need exactly when we need it, even if the timing seems wrong to others." That night, in the house that was now theirs together, Isaac and Abigail celebrated their union privately. There was passion, yes, but also tenderness and joy and the deep satisfaction of two people who had found each other against the odds. "I love you," Isaac whispered in the darkness. "I will spend every day proving worthy of this gift." "You already have," Abigail replied. "You saved me, Isaac, not just the business but me. You reminded me how to live." "We saved each other," he corrected. "I was drifting before I found you. Now I have purpose, home, love. Everything I never knew I needed." They fell asleep tangled together, and Abigail's last thought before sleep claimed her was gratitude for Samuel, who had loved her well, for Isaac, who loved her now, for the strange path life had taken that led her to this moment of peace. Spring brought increased business as ranchers prepared for the busy season. Abigail and Isaac worked long hours, but they did not mind. The smithy was thriving, producing everything from horseshoes to decorative railings for the new hotel being built on Lincoln's Main Street. Their reputation for quality work spread beyond the immediate area, and they began receiving orders from as far as 50 miles away. One warm May afternoon, Abigail was working alone in the smithy while Isaac delivered a completed order to a ranch outside town. She felt dizzy suddenly and had to sit down, the hammer slipping from her grip. The sensation passed after a few moments, but it returned the next day and the day after that. When she missed her monthly courses and the dizziness continued, understanding dawned. She was pregnant. The realization brought a complex mix of emotions. Joy, certainly, at the prospect of carrying Isaac's child, but also fear and a sharp pang of old grief. She had been pregnant once before, early in her marriage to Samuel, but had lost the baby at 3 months. The loss had devastated them both, and they had never conceived again. Now, at 25, she was being given another chance, but the memory of that earlier loss made it difficult to embrace the joy without reservation. When Isaac returned from his delivery, Abigail was sitting in the house, her hands folded in her lap, trying to decide how to tell him. "What is wrong?" he asked immediately, reading her expression with the accuracy born of deep connection. "Are you unwell?" "No, not unwell. But there is something I need to tell you." She took a breath. "I believe I am pregnant." Isaac's face went through several expressions in rapid succession before settling on cautious joy. "Truly, the signs all point to it, yes." He sat beside her, taking her hands. "Why do you look so worried?" "Is this not good news?" Abigail explained about her previous pregnancy and loss, watching his expression shift to understanding and concern. "I am frightened," she admitted. "Frightened of losing another baby, frightened of the pain that would bring. But also hopeful, which somehow makes it worse, because hope means there is further to fall if something goes wrong." Isaac pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I understand the fear, but we cannot live in terror of what might happen. We will be careful, we will take precautions, and we will hope. That is all we can do." "You are right," Abigail whispered against his shoulder. "I know you are right." They decided to keep the news private for the first few months, wanting to protect themselves from questions and expectations while Abigail navigated the vulnerable early pregnancy. She continued working in the smithy, but allowed Isaac to take on the heavier physical tasks. He fussed over her constantly, making sure she rested, insisting she eat properly, and she loved him for it even as she sometimes found it overwhelming. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer months. As Abigail's belly began to swell with undeniable life, they finally shared the news with the town. The response was largely positive, neighbors offering congratulations and advice in equal measure. Even Mrs. Henderson seemed genuinely pleased, going so far as to knit a small blanket for the coming baby. By autumn, Abigail had to step back from much of the physical work, her growing belly making it difficult to stand at the forge for long periods. Instead, she focused on the business side of the smithy, managing orders and accounts while Isaac handled the bulk of the actual forging. She found she had a talent for the organizational aspects, streamlining their processes and finding ways to increase efficiency. "We should hire an apprentice," she suggested one evening as they reviewed their order books. "A real one this time, not a cowboy who wanders in by accident." Isaac laughed. "That cowboy turned out fairly well, though." "He did indeed, but we need help, especially with the baby coming. Someone young who can learn the trade and eventually take some of the burden off you." They posted notices and asked around town, and within a week, they had 3 young men interested. After brief interviews and demonstrations, they settled on a lanky 17-year-old named Thomas, who showed genuine enthusiasm for the work and a willingness to learn. Having Thomas there helped tremendously. Isaac could focus on teaching while still maintaining their production schedule, and Abigail felt relief knowing they had backup if she needed to rest, or once the baby arrived. Thomas proved to be a quick study, soaking up knowledge like a sponge, and Isaac turned out to be an excellent teacher, patient and thorough. Winter arrived with unusual cold, and Abigail grew larger and more uncomfortable. The baby was due in late January, and as the time approached, she found herself plagued by anxiety despite the pregnancy's smooth progression. Isaac remained her anchor, calming her fears, reassuring her when panic threatened. On a frigid night in late January of 1885, Abigail's labor began. Isaac sent Thomas to fetch the midwife while he stayed with Abigail, holding her hand, murmuring encouragement. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next afternoon. Isaac never left her side, his presence a steady comfort even when pain made her want to scream. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the baby's cries filled the small bedroom. The midwife cleaned and wrapped the infant, then placed the bundle in Abigail's arms. "A boy," the midwife announced with a smile. "Strong and healthy." Abigail looked down at her son, his tiny face red and wrinkled, dark hair plastered to his head, and felt love crash over her with overwhelming force. He was perfect, miraculous, a gift she had feared she would never receive. "What should we name him?" Isaac asked, his voice thick with emotion as he gazed at his son. "Samuel," Abigail said without hesitation. "Samuel Isaac Garrett, honoring both the past and the present." Isaac's eyes filled with tears. "That is perfect. Thank you for honoring your first husband's memory this way." "He was a good man who deserved to be remembered," Abigail said. "And our son will carry both his name and yours, a bridge between where I have been and where I am now." The weeks after Samuel's birth were exhausting and joyful in equal measure. The baby was demanding, waking every few hours to feed, but Abigail did not mind. Every cry, every feeding, every small milestone felt like a victory, proof that she had successfully carried a child to term and birth. Isaac proved to be a devoted father, taking on middle-of-the-night duties when he could, walking the floor with his son when the baby was fussy, staring at the tiny human they had created with obvious wonder. Thomas helped keep the smithy running, though they had to turn down some larger orders in those early weeks. By spring, life had found a new rhythm. Abigail was back to working in the smithy part-time, baby Samuel sleeping in a cradle they kept in the corner of the workshop. Customers cooed over him when they came for pickups, and the baby seemed remarkably content with the noise and heat of the forge nearby. "He will grow up comfortable with this life," Isaac observed one afternoon, watching his son sleep peacefully despite the clang of hammer on anvil. "Maybe he will want to be a blacksmith too someday." "Maybe," Abigail agreed. "Or maybe he will choose something entirely different. Either way, we will support him." As Samuel grew from infant to toddler, the smithy continued to prosper. Abigail and Isaac's partnership remained strong, their love deepening with each passing season. They faced challenges, certainly difficult customers, a fire that damaged part of the workshop and required rebuilding, a harsh winter that slowed business for months. But they faced everything together, and that made all the difference. When Samuel was 3 years old, Abigail found herself pregnant again. This time there was less fear, more confidence born of experience. The pregnancy was easier than the first, and in the autumn of 1888, she delivered a healthy baby girl they named Margaret after Abigail's sister, with Rose as a middle name. Margaret was different from Samuel from the beginning, more demanding, quicker to anger but also quicker to smile. She had Abigail's brown eyes and Isaac's serious expression, a combination that was already charming at just a few months old. "Our family is complete," Isaac said one evening as they sat together, baby Margaret nursing while Samuel played with wooden horses his father had carved. 2 healthy children, a thriving business, a home we built together. I could not ask for more. Abigail leaned against his shoulder, feeling contentment settle over her like a warm blanket. "It is more than I ever imagined when you rode into town that first day. You gave me back my life, Isaac. More than that, you gave me a new life, better than I knew to hope for." "We gave each other new lives," Isaac corrected, as he always did. "I was lost before I found you. Now I am home." The years continued to pass, bringing the expected changes and challenges. Samuel grew into a thoughtful boy who showed interest in the smithy work, often standing beside his father to watch and learn. Margaret was wild and spirited, more interested in exploring Lincoln's dusty streets than learning any trade. Thomas married a local girl and eventually opened his own smaller smithy in a town 20 miles east, remaining friends and occasional collaborators with Abigail and Isaac. By 1895, Abigail was 36 and Isaac 41. Samuel was 10 and already showing real skill at the forge, while Margaret at 7 was a force of nature who kept both parents on their toes. The smithy had expanded to include 2 apprentices and a larger workspace, the business providing comfortable living for their family. One evening in late summer, after the children were asleep and the day's work complete, Abigail and Isaac sat on the porch of their home, watching the sun set over the New Mexico landscape. "You ever think about how different life could have been?" Abigail asked. "If you had not stopped in Lincoln that day, if I had sold the smithy and moved to Philadelphia like my sister wanted." "Sometimes," Isaac admitted. "Usually when I want to appreciate what we have even more than I already do." "You could have married some Philadelphia gentleman and lived a life of ease." Abigail laughed. "And been miserable, most likely. This life, hard as it sometimes is, suits me. You suit me. Our children, our work, our home, all of it is exactly right." "I am glad you think so, because I have been considering something." Isaac turned to face her. "The town council approached me about taking on the contract for all the ironwork in the new church they are planning. It would be a large project, maybe a year of work, decorative pieces along with structural. I told them I would discuss it with you first." "Why would you need to discuss it with me?" Abigail asked, then smiled. "This is our business together. Of course we should discuss it. What do you think?" "I think it would be good for us. Showcase our skills to the whole community. But it would require help, maybe hiring another apprentice or 2 temporarily, and it would mean long hours for both of us." They discussed the practical considerations, weighing the opportunity against the demands it would place on their family. In the end, they decided to take the contract, seeing it as a chance to create something lasting that would stand as testament to their skills long after they were gone. The church project dominated the next year of their lives. Abigail designed decorative hinges and door pulls while Isaac focused on the structural elements. Samuel helped with simpler pieces, his skills growing rapidly under his father's patient teaching. Even Margaret occasionally showed interest, though her attention rarely lasted long. When the church was finally completed in the summer of 1896, the entire town turned out for the dedication. The ironwork was magnificent, exceeding everyone's expectations. Decorative crosses adorned the doors, railings curved with elegant scrollwork, and everything was finished to the highest standard. The pastor praised their work publicly, and Abigail felt tears prick her eyes as she stood beside Isaac, their children flanking them. This was legacy, she realized. Not just the business Samuel had started, not just the skills Isaac had shared, but something they had created together, something that would endure. That night, lying in bed beside Isaac, Abigail reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. 11 years since Isaac had ridden into town, 12 years since Samuel's death, a lifetime of change compressed into just over a decade. "What are you thinking about?" Isaac asked, sensing her wakefulness. "Everything. How far we have come. How grateful I am that you appeared when you did, that you stayed, that you loved me enough to build this life together." Isaac pulled her closer. "Loving you has been the easiest thing I have ever done. Staying was never a question. From the moment I saw you standing in that smithy, determined to master a trade you did not know to honor your husband's memory, I knew you were extraordinary." "I was terrified," Abigail admitted. "Absolutely terrified I would fail. But you did not fail. You succeeded beyond anything I could have imagined, and you did most of it yourself. I just helped light the forge that first day." "You did much more than that," Abigail insisted. "You taught me everything. You saved the business and you saved me. Then we are even because you saved me too. You gave a drifter a home, a purpose, a family. Everything that matters to me exists because you let a stranger help you 11 years ago." They fell asleep holding each other, and Abigail's last thought was how remarkable it was that love could find you twice in one lifetime, in such different forms, both perfect for their moment. The years rolled forward with steady momentum. Samuel decided at 15 that he wanted to be a blacksmith like his parents, news that filled both Abigail and Isaac with quiet pride. Margaret shocked everyone by developing an interest in medicine, inspired by the town's doctor who occasionally let her shadow him. She announced at 12 that she intended to become a doctor herself, an ambition that would have seemed impossible for a girl in earlier years, but was becoming, if not common, at least conceivable by 1898. "Let her try," Isaac said when Abigail worried about the obstacles Margaret would face. "She has your determination. If anyone can break through barriers, it is our daughter." The new century arrived with celebration throughout Lincoln. Abigail was 41, Isaac 46, and they stood with their children watching fireworks light up the New Mexico sky, marveling at how much the world had changed since they first met. "A new century," Samuel said, his voice deepening with approaching manhood. "Everything will be different now." "Some things will change," Isaac agreed, "but some things remain constant. Family, love, honest work. Those endure regardless of what century we live in." The smithy remained successful through the early 1900s, though the rise of manufactured goods meant their work shifted toward more specialized custom pieces rather than everyday items. They adapted as they always had, finding new markets and opportunities. When Samuel was 20, he asked to become a full partner in the business rather than just an apprentice. Abigail and Isaac agreed readily, and the sign changed again to Vaughn, Garrett and Garrett Blacksmithing, ESD. 1878. The date honored Samuel Vaughn's original establishment while acknowledging the evolution the business had undergone. Margaret left for medical school in 1905, one of only a handful of women in her program. Her letters home were filled with stories of challenges and triumphs, and Abigail read each one with fierce pride. Her daughter was doing what Abigail herself had done years earlier, entering a world that traditionally belonged to men and claiming her place through skill and determination. The years slowed as Abigail and Isaac moved into their 50s. The physical demands of blacksmithing became more challenging, and they gradually shifted more of the work to Samuel and the apprentices they continued to train. But they remained involved, their experience and skills still valuable even as their bodies aged. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1904, Isaac gave Abigail a gift he had been working on secretly for months. A decorative gate for their home, wrought iron twisted into patterns of forge flames and hammers, with their initials intertwined at the center. "It is beautiful," Abigail breathed, running her fingers over the smooth iron. "The most beautiful thing you have ever made." "Not true," Isaac replied. "The most beautiful thing I ever made is the life we built together. This is just metal shaped by fire. What we have is so much more." By 1910, Abigail was 51 and Isaac 56. Samuel ran the smithy day to day, with his parents serving as advisors and occasional workers when needed. Margaret had finished medical school and returned to New Mexico, though she practiced in Santa Fe rather than tiny Lincoln. She visited often, bringing her new husband, a fellow doctor she had met during training. One quiet evening in autumn, Abigail and Isaac sat in their usual spot on the porch, the same place they had spent countless evenings over the past 26 years since they married. Their hands were linked, fingers intertwined with the ease of decades of love. "You remember that first day?" Abigail asked. "When you rode into town needing a horseshoe?" "Every detail," Isaac replied. "You in your black morning dress, trying to look confident while terror showed in your eyes. The cold forge, the broken horseshoes. I knew then that you needed help, but I had no idea how much you would change my life. I thought you were just a cowboy passing through. I never imagined you would stay, that you would become everything to me." "Sometimes the best things in life are the ones we do not plan for," Isaac said. "I had no intention of staying in Lincoln permanently. I was just going to help for a few days, maybe a week. But then I saw your determination, your strength, your refusal to give up. I fell in love without even realizing it was happening. I fought it at first," Abigail admitted. "Felt so guilty for developing feelings so quickly after Samuel's death. But you helped me see that loving you did not diminish what I felt for him. The heart has infinite capacity if we let it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. After a while, Isaac spoke again. "I want you to know something. These years with you have been the happiest of my life. Every morning I wake up grateful that I stopped in Lincoln that day, that you gave a stranger a chance, that you let me into your life. You made me a better man, Abigail. You gave me purpose and home and love. Everything good in my life comes from you." Abigail felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I could say the same. You saved me when I was drowning, taught me to be strong, loved me through grief into joy. Our life together has been the greatest gift." "To many more years," Isaac said, raising their joined hands to kiss her knuckles. "To many more years," Abigail echoed. And there were more years, good years filled with the satisfactions of work well done, children and eventually grandchildren, the deep comfort of enduring love. Samuel married a school teacher and gave them 3 grandchildren who often played in the smithy yard as their father had before them. Margaret balanced her medical practice with raising 2 children of her own, proving that a woman could have both career and family if she had the determination and support. Abigail and Isaac aged together with grace, their love deepening rather than fading as the decades passed. They marked their 30th anniversary, then their 35th, each year a victory and a blessing. The smithy continued under Samuel's capable management, evolving with the times but maintaining the standards of quality his parents had established. When Abigail was 63 and Isaac 68, he began to slow down noticeably. The years of hard physical labor took their toll, and though he remained sharp mentally, his body was tired. Abigail noticed with concern but said nothing, not wanting to acknowledge what she saw. One spring morning in 1923, Isaac did not wake up. He passed peacefully in his sleep, his heart simply stopping after 68 years of steady beating. Abigail woke beside him and knew immediately, the stillness unmistakable. She held him for a long time, weeping quietly, grateful that after 45 years together they had been granted this mercy, that he had not suffered, that she had been beside him at the end. The funeral was well attended, the entire town turning out to honor a man who had been a fixture of Lincoln for nearly 40 years. Abigail stood between her children as they lowered Isaac into the ground, and she felt the same tearing grief she had experienced when Samuel died, proof that the heart's capacity for pain matched its capacity for love. But this grief was different from before. She had loved and been loved for 4 decades. She had children and grandchildren, a successful business, a life rich with accomplishment and meaning. Isaac's death was devastating, but it did not leave her lost and alone as Samuel's had. She had the foundation Isaac had helped her build, the strength he had helped her develop. In the months after Isaac's death, Abigail found comfort in continuing the work they had shared. She spent time in the smithy, not doing heavy labor but teaching the younger apprentices, sharing knowledge Isaac had passed to her. She told stories of the early days when a widow and a cowboy had forged a partnership that became so much more. Samuel worried about her living alone and suggested she move in with his family, but Abigail refused gently. "This house holds 40 years of memories," she told her son. "I am not ready to leave it, and I am not fragile, Samuel. Your father taught me to be strong. I will honor that by continuing to live fully, as he would have wanted." She lived 9 more years after Isaac's death, active and engaged until the end. She saw her grandchildren grow, saw the smithy continue to thrive, saw Margaret become chief of medicine at her hospital. She told stories of both her husbands, honoring each man's role in shaping her life. When Abigail passed in her sleep in 1932 at the age of 73, she was buried between Samuel and Isaac, the 2 men who had loved her and whom she had loved in return. The headstone reads simply, "Abigail Vaughn Garrett, beloved wife, mother, Blacksmith, 1859–1932. Her children gathered after the funeral, going through her belongings, and found a journal she had kept sporadically over the years. The final entry, written just weeks before her death, read, "I have lived a remarkable life, shaped by love and loss in equal measure. Samuel gave me partnership and stability, teaching me that I was worthy of devotion. His death nearly destroyed me, but it also opened the door for Isaac, who appeared like Providence itself and taught me to be strong. Together, Isaac and I built something that endured, a business, a family, a love that sustained us through 4 decades of joy and challenge. I regret nothing except that death must part us all eventually. But what a gift it was, to love and be loved so well, to create and build and leave the world better than I found it. I go to my rest grateful, fulfilled, and eager to see my beloveds again in whatever lies beyond." The smithy continued for another generation under Samuel's children, before finally closing in the 1950s, when manufactured goods made traditional blacksmithing obsolete. But the church ironwork remained, and the gate Isaac made for Abigail, and stories of the widow who learned to forge and the cowboy who taught her, the partnership that became a love story for the ages. In Lincoln, New Mexico, where the desert meets the sky, their legacy endured, testament to the truth that sometimes the best things in life arrive unexpected, that love can find you more than once, and that strength comes not from never falling but from rising each time you do.